Eddie will now share Father John's homily based on today's readings.
Mark tells us that before dawn, Jesus seeks out a solitary place where he might pray alone. He turns to prayer in need of clarification and affirmation of his Galilean ministry of healing. Healing as the sacramental presence of God's compassion. In prayer, listening in the inner chamber of the heart is where the call to obedience is given. However, obedience is not the dictum we've made it out to be. Rather, true to its literal meaning, obedience is the call to listen. Ascolte, Abba Benedict teaches, listen with the heart. We have been taught a sad reversal of strategies when it comes to faith. Like the parent who says to the child, if you make good grades, mommy will love you. Still worse, because daddy loves you, you must make good grades. In this kind of admonition, the nature of love is severely wounded, indeed, if not killed. When we act obediently as a condition for being loved, we distort both the quality of human faith and the unconditional nature of love. The contrast between the Leviticus injunction for lepers and the response of Jesus to the leper who approaches him is striking. Leviticus, understandably concerned for community sanitation and well-being, nevertheless admonishes the leper not only to remain outside the camp, but also, in terms of public humiliation, to announce his impurity by wearing rags as a sign of exclusion. A lengthy and complex ceremony of ritual forms involving guilt offerings and burnt offerings were required before the leprous one would be pronounced ritually clean. While we concentrate on Jesus's response, it is easy to pass over the significance of the leper's behavior. Keeping in mind the social imperative for lepers to be kept apart, we see in this leper unusual courage and fearlessness in approaching Jesus. He is not concerned with what others might say or do to him. He comes beseeching and kneeling before Jesus. His need breaks through not only conventions intended to restrain his behavior, but also the religious laws and authority aimed at isolating him. As such, the leper is a witness to those of us who come under threats of prejudice and oppression, who are imprisoned in fear and timidity, and therefore remain distanced from the sources of healing. The leper before Jesus breaks through the psychic fence of inferiority and thus reaches the salvific word and touch of the healer. Jesus simply says, "Be clean," and touches the leper. Jesus suffers being contaminated by touching the diseased leper. His touch is the sacramental enactment of the word, "Be clean." We are stunned these days by images of Papa Francesco kissing the feet of outcast youngsters on Holy Thursday. More so, as he kissed the grotesquely informed man. True to his self-named spiritual guide, Il Poverello of Assisi, Papa Francesco demonstrates again and again fearless gospel gestures in conformity with Jesus, the Messiah. The cure is effective, motivated by being moved with pity. There is an earlier translation of being moved with pity that reads much more dramatically as being angry. This is typically Markan. He and his community of Jesus followers saw in Jesus their own hostility toward disease and other forces of human life, which militate against God's desire for wholeness of being. God wills life, not death, health, not illness. Jesus' act of healing the leper is prophetic of a battle with cosmic forces of evil. There is shouting and anger and violence in the profundity of a healing act. Nature suffers violence of reversal. The same applies to conversations in mind and heart, which reconstruct psychic anatomy toward a wholeness of soul. Somehow, through generations, the church has chosen to portray Jesus as soft-spoken and gentle of touch. Not so in the Markan community. Perhaps they were more in touch with nature's dark forces, calling for still greater authority of responses. And yet, there is no indication in this earliest of gospel witness that those who experience God's healing power are brought by that act of fullness of faith. To the contrary, they are in the earliest stages of belief, which for Mark and for us who journey the way of faith cannot be consummated short of the cross. This journey of ours takes a new turn as once again we make our Lenten way toward the great day of Easter liberation. Amen.